Hello out there, and welcome to another episode of the Academia Podcast. I'm Todd, I'm your host, and it may look a little bit different in here for a little while. If this is your first time watching, you're going to see that there's not very much of an archive to our show in terms of past episode content. And a big reason for that is that I'm trying to keep things to the point where we don't keep much of an archive, that we kind of continue to go through a 60-day cycle on things. So, as I just started this podcast in 2021, it's been 2 months now. We're learning a lot of things about where we're going as a show, and more of those types of archive material will be something that you can still view on the YouTube channel, as well as seeing through our archives over at our Patreon for exclusive members. But we are looking at getting some new software. We're looking at getting a new look. We are upgrading our production, our overall technology, and just simply the way that we're doing things here at the show. We've had about 25 episodes so far, and we've went through a lot of different types of books, reviews of books, some types of current events, some personal philosophies, as it all deals with education, about education for your children and staying sharp yourself as a parent. But there, as you can see, that there's going to be a lot of upgrades going on in the next few weeks in terms of our production, trying out new things, and there is quite a learning curve. Over the last 10 years or so, I have not done a lot of video and audio editing and production in terms with the latest technologies. Did a lot of it in college, did a lot of it in my internship after college. But once again, a lot of that stopped in 2011 when I moved to Alaska and I was out there doing youth ministry. There was a lot less of a need for doing audio and video production, and a lot of it was just day-to-day relationships. So we're getting back to a lot of steep learning curve about audio and video editing. But, as my promise of value to you, I want to continue to keep working to develop the best show that I possibly can. And for that means making necessary changes when things are seemingly at its top and working out great. Over the past 2 weeks or so, I have had times where I could not produce a show just because there's a lot of work going on in the back end. And that type of work is needed to make sure that we can continue to bring that promise of value to all you listeners out there that have been supportive and faithful to continue to have me as a trusted voice in your life. So even though that I had a system, that I had a routine going strong. And for those that have a routine in your life, if something works and you're productive and it's a comfortable habit for you, it can be difficult to change the system, even if it's working. But I don't want to just bring you a type of show that has the content of where it's at. I want to continue to aim better, and I want to continue to find areas where I'm strong, areas that I can deliver my promise of value to you as listeners, that we can continue evolving this show to what it needs to be, and something that is going to work for me in terms of being different, being original, and doing something that's not just a rehash or a repeat, that's going to be an echo chamber of anything else that you can find out there. And that is my promise of value. My promise of value is that I'm going to continue to bring my values, communicate them effectively, and hopefully motivate and encourage you as parents and as listeners to get you to a place of where you need to be in life. And I'm not sure where that is for every individual listener, but I believe that there are a lot of tools that we do have, and sometimes they just need some sharpening. So I'm changing the system, even though that we're going high speed and we're not stopping anything that we're doing. If you've seen the movie Speed with Keanu Reeves and Dennis Hopper, you notice that in that movie they have to evacuate basically a whole bus going to another bus because there's a bomb on the bus. They couldn't stop. They had to keep going, and they had to get all the passengers off, and they had to switch vehicles while they were both driving. And that's kind of what I feel like we're doing here, is that I saw a vehicle going somewhere, and while everything seemed great, I know that I needed to make a change, because had I not, I was heading down a direction that maybe not, it might not be the direction that I needed to go, even though things seemed like they were working. I was reviewing some books, I was rehashing some ideas, because I don't want to just be someone that's developing ideas that are just my own. I want to make sure that they're well rounded, and there's a heritage, and then I'm being resourceful. But at the same time, is that I want to be someone that's going to equip you as listeners for where you need to be, and where you're going with your educational pursuits, as parents, as we explore what the best possible school choice options are for your child. And so the organization or the company or the website, whatever you want to call it, that I had created at the beginning of the year is called Warp Zone U. It's obviously short for Warp Zone University. And it's really broken down into 3 different tiers. The first one is that I'm going to be someone that's not going to shy away from a Christian education. I believe that's fully important. I believe that's something that is completely void in our schools. And I believe that there's more of a hunger, and there's more of a thirst for those types of questions, for people needing the spiritual components. And I'm not someone that's going to bring in new age ideas or some type of pantheist approach that all religions are encompassing into one. I am a Christian. I have firm beliefs of how I got there, and my personal testimony is up on the YouTube page as well. But I'm going to be someone that's going to continue to bring forward why it's important, and I'm not going to shy away from having Jesus and his teachings and all of Scripture backed up into what I'm doing or what I'm teaching about. So the first thing would be a Christian education. The second is going to be a liberty education. So there's a philosophy, and I do believe that having the most limited form of state is something that's what causes a society to function, when people are voluntary in their pursuits, when they're not forced to do something. And in our world with education, there is compulsory education. Basically, in Minnesota, starting at age 7, from 8 till 18, you have to be in school. You have to have attendance in school. And there is all sorts of different types of compulsory laws. And I just believe that a society can be to the point where people are acting upon their best ethical choices, best approaches in terms of morality, and we can be people that are associated with free markets without being forced to do what we need to do. So bringing forth a liberty education, all centered around the ideas that you don't hurt people, you don't take their stuff. So that is speaking against any types of ideas of wasteful spending and taxation, and on top of having the freedom of choice at the top of everything, whether it be a religious type of pursuit, having freedom of religion, freedom of association, freedom of travel, freedom to keep the fruits of your own labor, and always protecting life, liberty, and property. So that's what we do here at academia, at the Warp Zone U. We want to foster those types of values. And the third one, in addition to a Christian and liberty education, is that I like to personally bring a little bit of nostalgia to the table, a little pop culture references from the 90s and a little bit from the 80s as well, because those just reminded me of times that were a little bit simpler. And so for those older than me that feel the same about the 60s or 70s, I would argue the same about the 90s, where I didn't care much about politics. Life seemed different. And for my contemporaries, my millennial crowd, I'm going to continue to bring forth some pop culture references from the 90s as well, just because I personally am a fan of them. So going forward, that's what Warp Zone U is. Obviously, our quote is to help you get from here to there. If you've ever played Super Mario 1, when you get to the second level, you can enter a warp zone that will get you to World 4. And then in World 4, Level 2, you can get another warp zone that'll take you all the way to World 8. And it's just kind of one of those things, is that we don't want to make shortcuts in life, obviously, but how can we be people that are going to equip and help to impart people to get from here to there, to be a launch pad for your success in life, and not just for your own personal success, but for your children as well, as they are the next generation. And what better way can we do that than through equipping them through education, because there are people and there are powers that be that are trying to keep your children for 7 hours a day, and in doing so, there's no type of withholding of their own agenda and influence of what they're trying to do to shape them for their types of pursuits of where they're going to be in the next generation. So that's what we are in general as a company, as an organization at Warp Zone U. Those three things, a little bit of nostalgia from the 90s for my millennial audience, parents, and then also, having liberty and a Christian education at its core. What is academia? This is obviously a podcast. We've been doing this on Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays. We're going to be steering back, and we're going to be scaling back to doing this on Tuesday and Thursdays. And if the momentum in the week is strong enough, then I will release a Saturday episode that week. So we're going to be switching from Monday, Wednesday, Friday to Tuesday, Thursday. And then if any bonus stuff comes out on Saturday, then that's fine. But academia is going to be centered around school choice. It's going to be centered around education. It's going to be centered around developments in education, current events, compliance issues, reviews of different types of curriculum that are out there, and also just going through practical steps so you can explore what it looks like and how to get there if you desire to opt out of that type of system. So academia is going to be a commentary on school choice, and we're going to be having those shows released on audio and on video through YouTube every Tuesday and Thursday. Now the next type of show that we have is called Retro Go, and that is Monday and Friday evenings. And you can see that on Twitch, you can see that on Facebook Live, you can see that on YouTube Live. And that is simply me going through video games, and it is a game streaming show, and it's quirky, and I do this with my toddlers as we just explore basic video games that were released in the 80s, and we're moving up all the way to Y2K. And we've played Donkey Kong, we've played Lolo, Kirby, Zelda, we played Mario. This week, and starting tonight, we'll be playing Super Mario 3, which is almost arguably the best Nintendo game for the Nintendo Entertainment System out there. So if that's something that you're into, we'll be playing that at 7 p.m. And it's kind of just a hook. It's kind of just an intro, to not, I wouldn't say be relevant, because I really don't care about being relevant. I just want to be able to provide something that is maybe a little less serious, and something that I can do that's just going to be fun for my children. So we play 2 hours of video games a week, but I'm not going to start them off by playing Fortnite or Overwatch or things that are released recently, but it's going to be something where they can appreciate the development of video games just as much as I have. And there is a teachable component to video games, and I can get into that as to why the entertainment industry is as successful as they are, and how the video game industry can continue to teach kids things almost better than what public schooling can. I know that a lot of strategy and there's a lot of puzzles in Zelda games, and that keeps you thinking and keeps you sharp as well. Those are thinking games. And can you get credit for doing things like that? You'd have to write your lesson plans out well enough, but I do argue that if I wanted to have my daughter play Zelda Wind Waker on the GameCube, and I wrote the lesson plan well enough, then I can argue to any point that if the superintendent wanted to look at our curriculum, then he couldn't argue, because I was witting enough to be able to devise a plan to make that possible. But also things such as Guitar Hero, you could teach kids that, and it sharpens their spatial and temporal reasoning. So there's lots of different things I believe that you can do to teach your kids things that's different than what public school is teaching them. And that doesn't mean that they get to play video games all day. But this video game show is just two hours of video games a week, very contained, very compressed. But um, we are going through memory lane, and we're going through the annals of history, so our children can learn to grow and respect what the history of video games are by playing them. And so the aim to all of this, obviously, is to help equip, to help empower parents, and to help encourage you. We want to be able to help provide a commentary to make this sort of thing seem possible. If you've been disenfranchised by the public schooling system, then we want to be a voice that's going to help you in your direction and help you in your momentum, that's going to equip, that's going to give you the resources that you need in order to make those informed decisions on what's best for you and your children. Time is of the essence, and not everybody has a lot of that. So even if it's something that I could provide to you to listen on your lunch break or in the mornings as you drive to work, I know that there's a lot of other types of podcasts, but if you could, give it just one listen a week if you're a busy parent. And sometimes that time will help you. I'm going to be doing a lot of research and development that's going to help get you to the point so you can make those informed decisions for you and your children. And as I am making those decisions for my children as well, I thought, if I'm doing this, why not I be resourceful and share what I'm learning with other parents out there. So once again, this is not a book club though. I've been doing a lot of book reviews, and a lot of that I believe is powerful types of information. And I do have a book list available. If you're more into that sort of thing, you can find that at warpzoneu.com/list. And then you can check out some books that I'm trying to read over the year. I'm trying to read 52 books a year. And I don't want to couple that challenge with the content for my show. And while I felt like something was strongly working with that, and the statistics are showing that our show has continuously been growing, I do believe that I need to get back to simply just talking about curriculum research, compliance research, current events regarding education, and making this easy to digest information for you. I might be getting into more book reviews. I might be getting into more approaches in pedagogy, which is basically education, developments in education, and then also coming up with things such as how to develop lesson plans, things like that. But there are going to be more exclusive content for our listeners, and if you guys want to check out our Patreon, you definitely can do so, and links to that will be provided in the show's description. But we're going to continue to have this be more of a current events type of show regarding education, but also talking about developments with compliance and the research of reviews on curriculum. So you can keep this show sided with the approach that we're just going to be a very much of a summary, or very much of a preview for more exclusive content that will be available through the show's Patreon. And I do that because, for one, the show needs to be funded, and secondly, I want to make sure that with the promise of value that we do deliver, that you're actually getting bang for your buck. If something's worth of value, I think most people out there have no problem paying for something if it's truly worth of value. I'm going to be coming out later this year with some type of manifesto with what I believe, why I believe it, and that will be available in print form. I won't be selling that. That is going to be a free resource for all of you as listeners, and we're already developing a lot of that. A lot of that's being written as we speak. I didn't want to really release a lot of information about that until it gets closer to the release time, but I just wanted to inform that that type of free book is going to be available to all our listeners, because I do just believe that if you have something, make the best part of your message free. And if you do so, then people will, they will subscribe to the other stuff that you do come out with. So I wouldn't want to keep that type of information away from my listeners. If I find something that I find valuable and I want to be able to give that to you as a free resource, so you don't have to, personally on your end break bank in just choosing the best options for you and your children. So my personal approach to education, though, if you have not been following the show, at the elementary through high school on a very basic level for me, I mean, I was always in the advanced classes, and a lot of that I can attribute to my mother. Even though that I wasn't homeschooled, I was in public school, but she had such a strong education, a heart for education, a teachable heart, and the heart of a learner, heart of a student. And because of that, she always equipped us with doing field trips and going to libraries and going to museums and just having a teacher's heart behind everything. She very much could have homeschooled us. To this day, I don't know why we weren't, but obviously bills had to be paid. My mom had to work, and she was probably the most valuable asset for me as a younger, developing, and emerging child that helped me and my siblings as well to always be in the more advanced side of classes. I succeeded pretty well in college. I always got good grades. I got a bachelor's in communications, media, and rhetoric, and so that was my undergraduate. And I just had always been a fan of learning in college, but I didn't always agree with the agenda that they were pushing, and it became more apparent the higher up I got in terms of college. After college, I went to an internship program where I learned ministry for 2 years, and that was in central Minnesota, and that really helped me to get where I went after that in the state of Alaska. I lived on an island on the southeast Alaska and the northwest Arctic, and I had helped out in their schools a lot with substitute teaching, paraprofessional, also working at a children's home and developing special educations where IEPs were not available or individual education plans, so we had to develop those on our own, just being mentors and being youth counselors inside of these types of youth programs that I was part of. I also worked at the Boys and Girls Club. I also worked at, like I said, a youth ministry developing discipleship programs. So education has always been something of a strong point in my life. 2015, I decided to go back to school to become a teacher, but I stopped about 2 years into the studying and 2 years into the program because I had major issues with how they were organizing and how they were developing their own programs, and the problems with the teachers unions and an over organized approach, the Department of Education, the Common Core curriculum. There was just way too much overhead. There was way too much disagreement. I was creating problems in my classes because I would get into debates with my professors about school choice, and they would talk about a unilateral approach. Okay, they did not want to have a debate. There was one way out there, just like how they wanted to talk only about, at times, that climate change was a settled science. We're not having a discussion about this anymore. But I have the questions, well, why can't we at least still have a conversation about it? To that end, there wasn't a lot of willingness, even at the level of a professor, many professors, to be able to have a conversation about what the merits of homeschooling was. Since, hey, we were in an education classes, we were in an education major, and there was only an approach to how we can do public schooling. There was no type of merit to exploring what private schooling or parochial schooling or charter schooling or online schooling or homeschooling. The moment that we began to bring stuff up like that, it was shut down rather quickly. That there was a one-size approach to education, and that was public schooling. And so I had learned to see, just looking and researching about waste, fraud, and abuse in the public sector through teachers' unions and the Department of Education. And I learned to realize that throwing money at the problem was not going to help anybody. In fact, it was actually continuing to help feed the problem, and that money is not going to be the cure-all to solving this issue inside our schools. I began to research more about what the school to prison pipeline was, and before how, education definitely existed before there was public schooling. But, I had learned to see that throughout the Industrial Revolution, there was this push to have the American dream, and how the American dream was pushed by big banks to be able to promise people that they could have a mortgage, and the whole new idea that you had to take your nuclear family out of the extended family estate and move into your own house was huge. The ideals that you had to work 9 to 5, mostly sometimes in overtime. And as a result, what happened? The kids are working 9 to 5. They are pushed into these mock jobs or these mock prisons. Basically, that this facility was going to get you prepared for a life working behind a desk or a life behind bars. And many types of inner city types of schools are resembling more today what prisons look like than what they do with any other type of segment of society. You take any type of um, structured type of institution in society, and what you could make school resemble the most, the only closest thing that school resembles is prison, and that is without a fact, or that is without a dispute, I should say. So the education was something that's definitely been there before the Industrial Revolution, through agrarian society, through a yeoman type of development in our history, is that there's been apprenticeships, there's been internships, this type of um, doctoring and grandfathering in of what your job is going to be, and how to work on a farm and have your own property, and how to work the land. So we're at a place today, if the power grids were to go out like they did in Texas, how are people going to survive? Most people are not property owners anymore, even though there's enough of it out there. And did you know that the largest, and this has been something new this year coming out with the news, the largest private landowner in America is Bill Gates? I think, what would he need to do with all that land? Well, put the pieces together. What has he been involved with his whole life? And there's a lot of things going on behind the scenes, and obviously, what are we to do? What are we to do as parents, and what are we to do as educators in our own private sector? I've talked about last week how it says in the book of Timothy that we make it our aim to live a quiet and peaceable life, that we may be able to win the influence of our neighbors that way. And so we show our neighbors the character of Christ. We don't have to be activists. We don't have to be pacifists either. You don't want to be so woke in your activism that you burn bridges with your neighbors. And you don't want to be so passive that if something were to happen in society, that you just allow anybody to just walk all over you. But I have lots of different types of content down this avenue that I would love to get to someday, of how you can grow to be, a private landowner. I learned things in Alaska about how to live off the land, and how to live with a subsistence mindset, and how to hunt and fish for your food, how to make life work without having a job. It's possible. It is very much possible, even without gasoline. I've seen people raise sled dogs and be able to use dogs and get fish to be able to for transportation. It is possible. But one thing I'm going to continue to do is, as I just kind of gave a good preview of what our show is, my promise to you is that of value. I'm going to be getting into it a little bit more as the show grows on with our Patreon, that we're going to be able to provide private consulting to you if your children has specific needs. And we're going to be doing things such as early career development, things such as temperament, personality profiles. Those are things that we'll be able to do. We can arrange different types of Zoom meetings with you. We can watch you and your children play with toys. And we do have access to different types of people that have a play therapy background. And we'll be able to assess different things based on your relationship with your own children. And we do have a lot of developments coming soon about how we can continue to develop these types of consultations because maybe you don't know how to be able to assess where you and your children are at, but you want to be able to understand more about their personality and their temperament, and what makes them go, and where they're at currently with their development. And these are things existing outside of their pre-existing knowledge, right? These are not academic tests. These are to gear what type of learner is your child, so we can help develop them and they can learn how to lead out of their own strengths. So those types are going to be things are going to be of value to our Patreon patrons. And also we're going to be getting into more types of classes where you can, if you want to be able to on a weekend watch, a 6-part video series, and you want to be able to subscribe to that sort of thing, and it's going to teach you different things and specific lesson plans and how to get into this specific thing or this specific review. We're going to be able to make that sort of thing for our exclusive members as well. But if you just want to be able to enjoy the ride, enjoy the commentary, enjoy your cup of coffee, and listen to us, this sort of resource is going to be free. It's going to continue to be something available on most every type of podcast app out there. You just search academia and you'll be able to find us out. But I want to be able to continue to be a resource for you parents that are aiming to opt out. We want to be able to continue to deliver options, whether it's online, charter, homeschooling, parochial, private and public schooling. We want to offer a step-by-step process for you on how you may opt out. So what you as a parent, what might you need to do in order to be the best success in your life? We want to make sure that you're not stuck in the middle, that after you start that you don't feel lost. We want to be able to help encourage you, because it might be a bumpy ride for some of you to start out with, because maybe you grew up in public schooling and you don't know what it's going to look like should you want to choose how to homeschool your own kids. But we have a lot of R&D going on here at the show, and we want to just let you know that things might look different over the next week or so. You're not going to once again find an archive for the show's content. Once again, that will be available at our Patreon, but we're also going to re-release it with some different types of mastering and mixing as well, because we want to make sure that our production is always at the highest end that it possibly can be. But I'm excited to release the new content that we're coming out with, and I just want to emphasize it's not any content, but we're going to continue to bring the best type of content that we possibly can for you as listeners. Some ways that you can help us out is that you can always donate. You can always give to us at our Cash App. Cash tag is going to be Warp Zone U, or you can give to us at PayPal at paypal.me/WarpZoneU. Or you can just go to our website at warpzoneu.com, scroll all the way to the bottom, you'll see a little yellow button. That little yellow button will prompt you in different types of giving. That always helps us to be able to help grow the show and to be consistent with where we need to be, because I need to justify the time that I am spending away from extra hours and overtime or while I'm losing sleep to make sure that I'm going to deliver you the best. And that type of donation is a very strong incentive for me to get out of bed when I could be sleeping. And then also another way that you can help out is to leave a review. And if you haven't left a review and you've been listening to the show for a while, please take 10 minutes or so and just leave a review for us over at your podcast app, and that will definitely help us out. One additional way that you can help is by sharing the show. And I would like to strongly encourage that you share it to at least 3 people who need this, 2 who you think will follow us and who will listen, and then make sure you also share it to at least 1 person who you don't think will listen to the show. Once again, though, I do want to thank you for your time listening. We're in it for a little bumpy ride here for the next week or so, but we're charting a new course, we're charting new territory. We just want to thank you for listening, and like always, stay safe out there, and God bless.